A middle-of-the-night home invasion, a woman vanishes, and a desperate 911 call that no one believes. When Denise Huskins was kidnapped from her boyfriend's Vallejo home, authorities didn't launch a search, they launched an accusation. The couple's nightmare was just beginning, as police publicly labelled their ordeal a Gone Girl hoax inspired by fiction, referencing the popular 2014 thriller about a woman who stages her own abduction to frame her husband. Through painstaking evidence collection and one detective's refusal to ignore a single strand of blonde hair, investigators would eventually uncover the disturbing truth. A Harvard-educated former Marine had orchestrated the entire abduction with military precision. But by then, Denise had already endured unimaginable trauma, not just at the hands of her captor, but from those who had sworn to protect her. How did a kidnapping victim become a suspect? And what does it take to reclaim your truth when the world has already decided you're lying? This is the story of Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn, where a single detective's dedication unraveled two crimes: a kidnapping and a cover-up. Denise Huskins, a physical therapist in Vallejo, California, was known for her compassion and dedication to helping others. Colleagues described her as vibrant and kind-hearted, someone who made patients feel at ease during difficult recoveries. Aaron Quinn, also a physical therapist, was devoted to his profession and rebuilding his life after a broken engagement with his former fiancée, Andrea. This past relationship had created tension between Aaron and Denise when she discovered emails showing Aaron had reached out to Andrea about possibly rekindling their relationship. The night of March 22nd, 2015, had actually been a turning point for the couple. Denise had come to Aaron's home specifically to discuss whether they could move forward together. During that evening, they had an open conversation about their relationship challenges. Aaron had promised to seek therapy and rebuild trust. They had pizza, shared a few drinks, and made a commitment to work through their issues together. Before going to bed, Aaron had followed his normal routine, locking the doors and turning off the lights. They fell asleep with a sense of cautious optimism about their future. To the public, Matthew Muller presented himself as an accomplished professional with impressive credentials. A former Marine, a Harvard law graduate, and a practicing attorney. On paper, a portrait of success. But beneath this carefully constructed facade lay a deeply disturbed individual whose life was slowly unraveling despite his prestigious background. Born and raised in South Lake Tahoe, Muller had achieved what many would consider the American dream. His intelligence had taken him from a small mountain town to the prestigious halls of Harvard. Yet something had fractured within him. His promising legal career had begun to collapse years before the events of 2015. The warning signs were clear in retrospect. In 2013, Muller's law license was suspended for failure to pay his bar dues. More troublingly, he had taken money from a client for a green card application that he never filed. When the California State Bar attempted to discipline him for his ethical breach, they were unable to locate him. He had simply disappeared. By 2015, Muller was formally disbarred by order of the California Supreme Court, but by then he had already abandoned his legal career and was slipping further into instability. Mental illness, possibly bipolar disorder with psychotic features, had begun to manifest in increasingly erratic behavior. Former colleagues described witnessing concerning changes in his demeanor and decision-making. One moment he would display the brilliance that had taken him to Harvard. The next he would become paranoid or fixated on elaborate theories and scenarios. The gap between Muller's public persona and private reality continued to widen. His military experience, though largely administrative rather than combat-oriented, had given him knowledge of tactical planning. His legal training provided insights into criminal investigations and evidence. His technological aptitude enabled sophisticated digital surveillance. These skills, combined with his deteriorating mental state, created a dangerous individual hidden behind the increasingly tattered facade of a former Marine and Harvard graduate. The stage was set for something no one could have anticipated. The peaceful quiet of their bedroom was shattered when a sudden flash of red light coming from what looked like a laser sight swept across their blanket. Before Denise could react, a strong chemical smell filled the air, and a damp cloth was pressed over her face. Her vision blurred, her body felt heavy, and her mind fought to understand what was happening. As she slipped into unconsciousness, Aaron was also being overpowered, restrained, and drugged. Both were helpless as the intruders took control. The harsh bite of the zip ties cut into Denise's wrists. She was placed into the trunk of Aaron's car, which had been stolen by the intruders before being transferred to another vehicle. When Denise woke, she found herself inside a small, unfamiliar room. Whenever her captor entered, Denise would hear the sharp click of a recorder, followed by an electronically altered voice delivering cold, pre-recorded instructions. The mechanical tone echoed off the bare walls, heightening her fear. Meanwhile, back at the house, Aaron slowly came to. Groggy and disoriented, he realized his hands and feet were bound, and Denise was gone. Instructions had been left behind, warnings not to call the police along with threats meant to keep him silent. Terrified and unsure what to do, Aaron eventually made a desperate 911 call describing what had happened. But from the very first moments, his story was met with doubt instead of urgency. During her time being held, Matthew Muller used substances to incapacitate Denise and took advantage of her twice, recording the incidents while convincing her he was part of a much larger criminal group. When I was taken, Denise would later recall, I didn't know if I would ever see my family again. I kept thinking about all the things I hadn't said to them. The call came at 1:53 a.m. on March 23, 2015. Aaron Quinn's voice trembled as he spoke to the Vallejo Police Department dispatcher. His girlfriend, Denise Huskins, had been kidnapped from their bed by intruders wearing wetsuits who had drugged them both and left him bound for hours. But from that very first moment, no one believed him. The responding officers exchanged glances as Aaron described men in wetsuits, blacked-out goggles, laser-sighted weapons, and a ransom demand of $15,000. His dazed demeanor and the 9-hour delay in reporting only deepened their suspicion. Instead of launching a search for Denise, detectives immediately treated Aaron as a suspect. For 18 grueling hours, they interrogated him while valuable time slipped away. A detective, Matt Mustard of the Vallejo Police Department, led the questioning, coldly stating, whatever happened, it happened in that bedroom, revealing his theory that Aaron had harmed Denise and invented the kidnapping story. Critical evidence was mishandled at every turn. The police unplugged the surveillance camera the kidnappers had installed in Aaron's home without properly examining it first, a device that could have provided vital clues about the intruders. Even more damaging, officers put Aaron's phone in airplane mode despite his repeated insistence that the kidnappers would contact him with further instructions. This decision had devastating consequences. Phone records would later show that 2 traceable pings had been sent to Aaron's phone, one from just 200 yards away from where Denise was being held captive. Every potential lead was ignored in favor of building a case against Aaron. On March 25th, in a bewildering turn of events, Muller drove Denise nearly 500 miles south and released her near her family's home in Huntington Beach. When she came forward, instead of relief, she was met with accusations. The same day, Denise reappeared. The Vallejo Police Department held a press conference that devastated the already traumatized couple. Vallejo Police spokesman Kenny Park stood before reporters and cameras to publicly declare, "It was such an incredible story, we initially had a hard time believing it, and upon further investigation, we couldn't substantiate any of the things he was saying." The department released an official statement claiming, "Today, there is no evidence to support the claims that this was a stranger abduction or an abduction at all. Given the facts that have been presented thus far, this event appears to be an orchestrated event and not a crime." The impact of this public dismissal was devastating. News outlets across the country ran with the real-life Gone Girl narrative, subjecting Denise and Aaron to intense scrutiny and ridicule. Complete strangers debated their credibility on social media and in comment sections. The couple would later reveal that the public shaming was even more traumatizing and devastating for us than the kidnapping itself. In June 2015, nearly 3 months after Denise Huskins' kidnapping was dismissed as a hoax, justice finally arrived through an unexpected channel: a home invasion 40 miles away in Dublin, California. But the path to this moment would require what the Vallejo police had failed to provide: a detective who actually listened. When Detective Misty Carausu of the Dublin police force responded to the similar home invasion, she discovered a critical mistake. The perpetrator had left his cell phone at the crime scene. This led investigators to Matthew Muller's South Lake Tahoe cabin. In a stolen white Ford Mustang found near Muller's property, Carausu meticulously documented every potential piece of evidence. 2 gloves matching one from the Dublin crime scene, all covered in distinctive foxtails. Receipts for a flashlight, a speaker, and zip ties purchased near Dublin the night of that home invasion. But it was what Carausu found in the trunk that connected everything: a pair of goggles covered in duct tape with a single strand of blonde hair stuck to the adhesive. That single strand of hair would become the thread that unraveled Muller's elaborate deception and vindicated Denise Huskins and Aaron Quinn. With the connection established through Detective Carausu's careful work, the FBI took over the investigation. The evidence recovered from Muller's hideout was damning: video recordings, items belonging to Denise, and the tools of his crime spree. In 2017, Matthew Muller pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison for kidnapping. For Denise and Aaron, the resolution brought vindication, but not immediate healing. They filed a lawsuit against the Vallejo Police Department for defamation and won a $5.2 million settlement in 2018. More importantly, they began rebuilding their lives together. Writing our book, Victim F, From Crime Victims to Suspects to Survivors, was therapeutic, Denise had said. We wanted other victims to know there's hope for recovery from trauma. The couple married and started a family, finding joy and purpose after their ordeal. But the scars remain. None of the officers who dismissed them, humiliated them publicly, or failed to follow leads that could have prevented another attack faced any professional consequences. Detective Matt Mustard, who had accused them of staging a hoax, was later honoured as Officer of the Year. The legacy of this case extends beyond one couple's vindication. It reminds us of the damage done when victims aren't believed and the critical importance of evidence-based investigation. Detective Carausu, who remains a close friend to Denise and Aaron, represents what law enforcement should aspire to: the determination to follow evidence wherever it leads, even when it challenges established narratives. Every crime has a story. Every story has a lesson.